Welcome to Priceless Takes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to episode 10 of Priceless Takes. I am your host, Luka Price. Happy to have you with me. I am live from Vancouver in Canada on the last leg of my trip. I am heading back to South Carolina tomorrow, where I'll be residing for the next few months before I do head back to the land down under Australia, where I'll be spending my summer break back home with my family and friends. But I'm incredibly excited to have you here with me today. What a show we have in store. I am solo again for this episode. I will have David back hopefully within the next week or two. He is very unwell, but in the meantime, I'm looking forward to having some guests join me on my Tuesday episode, mainly to talk about the NBA. I will still be solo for the majority of the NFL talk, but I have some analysts who are keen to share some hot takes on the NBA. Thank you all as well for following our Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube pages. There's been a lot of follower engagement with our recent posts, most notably where I deconstructed my top 5 players in the NBA right now. A similar post might be coming out to my all-time top 10 NBA players, and I will continue updating it along with all accounts. We are at Priceless Takes on Instagram, on YouTube, and TikTok. For today's show, I will go with you through Pricey's picks, followed by a recap of my thoughts of the recent AFC playoff changes due to the Damar Hamlin incident. And finally, I will end the show with my best teams in the NBA right now, and we will take a deep dive into the NBA standings. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have Pricey's picks for Week 18, the final regular season game of the NFL season. Unfortunately, we did not hit last week on Pricey's picks. We were 2 out of 3. And look, at the end of the day, we were too confident in Gardner Minshew's ability to lead the Eagles to a victory of an undermanned Saints team. Unfortunately, they did lose that game, and we will not be making the same mistake again this week. Although we did not win in last week, that does decline our overall tally to 27 out of the last 29 picks that we have predicted. So stay tuned for this week's Week 18, where we will pick and then preview the playoffs. The playoffs, in my opinion, are much easier to pick than the regular season because in the playoffs, the majority of the time, the best teams win. And when we see that happen in the NFL, we know that means there's a lot of value for you guys out there and a lot of value for us in our tips. So, speaking of the first game of the weekend, we have the 7-9 Cleveland Browns traveling to the 8-8 Pittsburgh Steelers. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers straight up to win at $1.69, which we think is absolute value considering that the Steelers are on a hot streak right now. They won last week against Baltimore on the Monday Night Football game. Kenny Pickett for the second week in a row, throwing for the game-winning touchdowns. The Steelers do still have a playoff spot on the line. So if the Steelers were to win and the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins were both to lose, as well as the Tennessee Titans, that would mean that the Pittsburgh Steelers would manage to find themselves in a playoff spot. Additionally, they have never had a losing season under coach Mike Tomlin. If they lost this game, that would make them 8-9 on the season, and that would break this streak that he has had ever since coming to Pittsburgh over a decade ago. So, the increased play of Kenny Pickett, the quarterback, along with this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is really going to help them against the Browns. They haven't looked as impressive since Deshaun Watson has come. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense in particular, they are looking to make this the 7th straight game where they have held their opponents under 17 points or less. They have done that for the past 6 games, and their defense has been red hot. While their offense hasn't been performing to the expected level, putting up large amount of points themselves, Kenny Pickett is getting the job done. They are 7-2 with star defensive player TJ Watt, last year's defensive player of the year, and in my opinion, could have been in the running again if he wasn't injured throughout the middle part of the season. They are 7-2, ladies and gentlemen, with TJ Watt. They are 1-6 without him. He is in the game this weekend. He is healthy, ready to go to terrorize Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have scored 20 points twice under the Deshaun Watson campaign since week 13. Look, and that came in his first game against the Houston Texans, and that came last week against the Washington Commanders. Fortunately for the Steelers this week, the secondaries the secondary of the Steelers is red hot. Minkah Fitzpatrick leading the back line out there is a very good luxury to have. Um, Cameron Sutton is also playing extremely well, locking down wide receivers. But the Commanders and Texans, ladies and gentlemen, do not have very good secondaries, allowing for Deshaun Watson to pick them apart. The Commanders last week was especially an underwhelming performance. We do not expect Deshaun Watson to play that well. We expect Pittsburgh to potentially give themselves a playoff berth, which would be amazing considering how they started the season, and we expect them to win. Onto the main thing that's going to be apparent in this game is going to be the running backs. Look, running back Jalen Warren for the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, 6.3 yards a carry on 12 attempts. Najee Harris, the main man in the backfield for the Steelers, 111 rushing yards this week. He also caught the game-winning receiving touchdown. The Browns allow 5.1 yards to running backs. And last week, the Baltimore Ravens defense, up until playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, allowed 3.8 yards per carry to running backs. So the Browns are progressively worse holding running backs than the Baltimore Ravens were. And we saw what the Steelers did last week to the Ravens. So we say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be able to run the ball on Cleveland, which is going to open the channels up for Kenny Pickett, to find George Pickens, to find Pat Fryermuth, to find Deontay Johnson, to find those lanes. Pickett, like I said, back-to-back weeks, game-winning touchdowns. This week, I think it will be a close game. I think the Steelers will end up winning. I think they'll end up winning relatively comfortably. It might be a touchdown. It might come late, but I think even if the scoreline doesn't reflect a comfortable win, I think that they will still win comfortably based on how the defense shuts down the Cleveland Browns and how the Pittsburgh Steelers offense might take a bit to warm up. But ultimately, I still give them a win. $1.69, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute value for money. On to the second game. We have the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. We have the Bengals straight up to win at $1.21. And in my opinion, the only reason they are this long is because of the incident that happened on Monday night. Again, prayers up for Damar Hamlin. He's doing well from the sources that I've been reading, so that's good. But onto this game. Once again, the Ravens find themselves without Lamar Jackson. They've been without him since week 12. They have played well, but their strength of schedule has been abysmal. They have not played very good teams. They've played the Browns, they played the Steelers twice, and they haven't played a lot of good teams. They've been scraping past teams that are not very good. Listen, they lost to Pittsburgh last week in a game that was 50-50, and unfortunately for them, it's not going to get any easier. Joe Burrow has been on fire. For those of you who watched the opening 10 minutes of the Monday Night Football game, Joe Burrow elected to receive the ball on the toss, drove down the field, and threw a dime of a touchdown pass to T. Higgins. It was great. It was great. They looked like they could have hung up 40 points on that Bills defense. Maybe it wouldn't have happened, but that opening drive certainly looked like it before the game was stopped. And look, I think that Cincinnati has a lot to be mad about. There's a lot of stakes playing for this game. A lot of playoff adversity that's going to come for the Cincinnati Bengals now, because we will get into this later in the show, but essentially, if the Ravens win this game, then the playoff they would verse each other in the playoffs, assuming the Chargers also win. There will be a coin toss to figure out who gets a home playoff game out of the Bengals and the Ravens, which I think is ridiculous considering that the Bengals have a better winning percentage, but the argument is that the Ravens would have beaten them twice, so a coin toss is the only fair way. Look, regardless of that, we'll get onto that later in the show, but there are very high stakes for both teams on this game. And I think that the Bengals are going to come out with a vengeance. We saw Zach Taylor earlier in the week saying that this is exactly what this team is built for, to have 7 home games, 9 road games, and potentially still get a home playoff game taken away from them, even though they've technically won the AFC North, as the NFL has stated. Zach Taylor was on point when he said that he was frustrated, but I think ultimately it's going to fuel the Bengals. They have had a gauntlet of a schedule this year, unlike the Baltimore Ravens had. They have had a gauntlet of a schedule, and they're still, could have been fighting for the number 1 seed until the changes to the formatting occurred this week. But listen, On to some statistics before I get onto my final game of the week. The Bengals defense, 3.9 yards per carry for the running backs against. Fifth best in the NFL. Unlike the Ravens, who got trampled on last week, the week before, the Cincinnati Bengals played the Patriots, and they only allowed them to just over 100 yards rushing. And look, the situational defense of the Bengals, I've been going on about it all year, is great. But they are the best defense in the NFL in pass completion allowed at 60.2%. Now, to combat that, Tyler Huntley, the backup quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, has not thrown for over 140 yards in the 4 starts that he has had. Additionally, along with Huntley, star running back J.K. Dobbins, defensive lineman Calais Campbell, and cornerback Marcus Peters, along with another defensive lineman Jason Pierre-Paul, all questionable to play this week for the Baltimore Ravens. I think Huntley will play. I'm unsure about the rest of them. I would like to say J.K. Dobbins would play because he really makes their offense go. But a lot of the Ravens players are banged up, and Cincinnati really only has Sam Hubbard. Eli Apple's also on the list, but I don't think it's that much of a concern for the Bengals. Sam Hubbard is a great player for the Bengals, and he got a fractured wrist. But look, he's questionable to play. Even if he doesn't play, DJ Reed is going to hold down the fort. I think the Bengals win easy. I think they really send a message to the NFL. They're going to be ticked off by the NFL rulings this week on the playoff picture. I think the Bengals, they won't be afraid of the moment. Obviously, there was a very emotional scene on Monday night. I think they're going to look to give T. Higgins the ball due to his role. Unfortunately, he was the player that collided with Damar Hamlin before the incident. Obviously, nothing wrong on the part of T. Higgins. It was a football play. But it did happen, ladies and gentlemen. I expect the Bengals to feed T. Higgins the ball and try get him going early. Give him some confidence. He's been their best receiver this year due to Jamar Chase's injury, although Jamar Chase is the number 1 receiver when he comes back. Ladies and gentlemen, Cincinnati Bengals, $1.21. Take it along with the Browns and the Steelers. But what a final game I have in store for you, ladies and gentlemen. An NFC North showdown between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, both coming in at 8-8. What a game this is going to be. The Packers, ladies and gentlemen, I have them for you only at a very, very valuable price at $1.40. This is, in the words of David, the NFL guru, money for jam. The Packers are the biggest living certainties I have ever seen for this game. Look, the Detroit Lions, they've been extremely inspiring. No one gave them a shot really to do anything. They went on a 6-game winning streak. Unfortunately, that got snapped by the Carolina Panthers, but they were looking really menacing. Jared Goff has been dealing all year. The Detroit Lions have been a top 5 offense in scoring, and they have been exceeded anyone's expectations, but unfortunately, I have to tell you that it is going to end for them this week against the Packers. The Green Bay Packers, from top to bottom, have been on fire, and that is largely due to the ball being taken out of Rodgers' hands. But before I get into the Green Bay offense, I want to give you a lot to do with the Green Bay defense. Last week, they completely shut down the Minnesota Vikings, who have been one of the NFL's most high-powered offenses this year. Jair Alexander held Justin Jefferson to 1 catch for 15 yards last week. Justin Jefferson considered the best receiver in football by many. I think Devontae Adams is still the best, but Jefferson, for me, is a top 3 receiver. The Green Bay defense has held their opponents to 21 points or less in their last 4 games. Like I said, this includes the Minnesota Vikings. This also includes the Miami Dolphins, another high-powered offense. 3 interceptions last week. 3 interceptions last week for the Green Bay Packers secondary. Along with that, the offense, 163 rushing yards against the Vikings, who have an atrocious defense. But so do the Detroit Lions, 31st rush defense in the league. The Carolina Panthers, who snapped their winning streak, 320 rushing yards against this Detroit defense. I think at Lambeau, where Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon dominate in the run game, this will be one of the big factors that is going to make Green Bay win this game. The Packers have definitely got something to take away from that Week 9 loss. They did lose to Detroit. I believe it was a 15-9 scoreline, and it was an abysmal game. Rodgers threw for 2 interceptions, both in the red zone. Excuse me. It was not his best performance, ladies and gentlemen. But look, since then, like I said, the ball has been taken out of his hands in the majority of their games since the ball has been taken out of Rodgers' hands, particularly in the last four games. They have found success where they have rushed more than they've passed. And that has been the formula for Green Bay winning. We saw earlier in the season when the offense was really just solely around Aaron Rodgers and they didn't go to the run game, they struggled. But now the run game has opened up Aaron Rodgers to find the deep shots, to find Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson, who has been a fantasy football beast for many this year. The ball has out of his hands looked much better. The Packers' offense has looked great. The Lions' O-line is a top three in sacks taken. They protect Jared Goff very well, which is a big reason why the offense has been well. But the Packers team blitzes a lot, 35% blitz percentage, which is extremely high. It's a top five blitzing defense. Ultimately, like I said, I think these two will cancel each other out, and I think this is going to be a big battle of the secondary. I think, like Jair Alexander traveled with Justin Jefferson last week, he needs to do the exact same with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is electric coming out of the wideout. He is great. They also have Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. Look, Green Bay hasn't been the best defense in stopping the run, but I think that ultimately they're going to come up with the goods. Aaron Rodgers versus Jared Goff for a spot in the playoffs. I like my chances on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers chokes in the playoffs, but luckily it's not the playoffs yet. So I think he's going to have a good game. I think that there's going to be chances for him to find those rookie wide receivers down the sidelines on the deep routes. And don't be surprised if Green Bay hang some points on this defense after they got only 9 points against them in a crushing loss. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is my three games for you. We have the Green Bay Packers at $1.40. We have the Cincinnati Bengals at $1.21. Pittsburgh Steelers at $1.69. Straight up to win. All three. Take it. Absolute value. $2.89 for your multi. That's a 289% increase on your value for only 3 hours work. I think going into our final week, these are some great picks. Take them. I think you guys will be extremely happy with the results you find. And then we will come back again for the NFL playoffs, where, in my opinion, the picks are better value. The best teams, 95% of the time, win. But now we will get on to another segment in the show, where earlier this week we saw the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell have a meeting with the owners and decided to change the playoff formatting for the AFC teams in concurrence to the Damar Hamlin situation that occurred on Monday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. So, essentially, the Buffalo Bills versus Cincinnati Bengals game has been cancelled. And what this means now is the Kansas City Chiefs are in prime position to take over the number one seed of the AFC when, if the Bills beat the Cincinnati Bengals, this probably would have meant that the Bills would get the number one seed. But now it's looking like the Buffalo Bills are going to be the number two seed. And look, honestly, like I said, I think that now the Bengals have little to no shot of getting the number two seed. It would take Buffalo to lose and for them to win to get the number two seed. Personally, I think that if Cincinnati had beaten Buffalo, which I believe they would have, on the Monday Night Football, this would have given them the 2 seed, and the Bills would be down to the 3 seed based off the head-to-head tiebreaker. This means that Buffalo would have to travel to Cincinnati to play a divisional round playoff game, where now the scenario has been flipped, and if the Bengals get past the wild card weekend, they will have to travel to Buffalo to face the Bills, which I think I trust Joe Burrow in a game like this. I trusted him last year against Kansas City at Arrowhead. I trust him again against Buffalo. But what is more concerning is that the Chiefs are going to get the number one seed based off win percentage over the Buffalo Bills because they have played the extra game and they would have won the same amount of games, but Kansas City has less losses, so they get the win percentage. They get the number one seed because of this, but the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals play each other this week, week 18, like I just said before. If the Ravens win this game, they will have beaten the Bengals twice. Now, they will have a worse win percentage than the Bengals. They will have one more loss, but instead of giving the Bengals a home playoff game, like the Chiefs have gotten the 1 seed, instead of giving the Bengals the home playoff game, they're going to do a coin toss to decide who gets the home playoff game. Even though the Cincinnati Bengals have been crowned the AFC North champions. And this is where I have some problem with this because obviously the NFL was in an extremely difficult position. But I personally think that the Bengals got the very, very, very short end of the stick here. For them to be in a position where they would have likely beaten the Bills, not definitely. Like I said, we can't take 10 minutes of the first quarter into account for a full game. But I think going into this game, the Bengals are going to win. I think looking at how the game started, the Bengals went for 7. Buffalo came right back at them. They got held to 3. Look, I feel like that would have been the storyline of the game personally. But we will not speculate on this game. Personally, I think it's unfair because essentially there's a potential for the Bengals to be having a home playoff game taken away from them. Not only that they are having the 2 seed stripped of them because I highly doubt the Buffalo Bills are going to lose to the New England Patriots when they play in Buffalo. And I just think that Cincinnati got the rough end of the stick here. I really don't think the NFL did the right thing here. I feel like there was another way. In my head, I'm trying to think of ways. But personally, I think the NFL could have done a better tiebreaker system as opposed to just screwing the Bengals over and not giving them a chance to get to the 2 seed. Because for them to even get back in the race for the 1 seed after how they started is quite astonishing, the run that they've gone on. But look, like I said, I trust the Cincinnati Bengals wherever they play. I don't care if it's at Arrowhead. I don't care if it's in Buffalo. It could be in London. It could be in Brisbane, Melbourne, Australia. It could be in Indonesia for all I care. I trust Joe Burrow and the Bengals wherever they play. And look, I still think that they will get to the Super Bowl regardless because I think they were either going to have to go to Buffalo or to Arrowhead. But now it looks like they're going to have to go to both. Even though last year they did go to the Tennessee Titans, who were the 1 seed, and beat them. But I think that the Bills and the Chiefs combined are a lot tougher than versing the Titans and then the Chiefs. That's just my opinion, but I still think they can do it. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, Zach Taylor said it perfectly when he said that this team is built for this, and I think they're going to use it as motivation. That is my thoughts on that. Let me know if you disagree with what I think. I'm happy to hear some other opinions, but personally, I think the NFL could have found a better way to do it. Now, to finish off the show, we will get onto some NBA talk. After the NFL season is finished, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, we will begin Pricey's picks on the NBA. And the difference with the NBA is that NBA is played on a night-to-night basis. And while I can't do podcasts every day, I will look to target days where there are a lot of NBA games on, or if there are days where there are some NBA games that are big, good value for money. But this obviously means that due to the NBA, injury reports get updated very last minute. It's going to make this much harder. So, for the faithful viewers out there, I will need you to bear with me for once we get started with the NBA picks. However, this won't be coming for another month until the NFL playoffs finish, and then we will get straight into the thick of things. But what are we seeing in the NBA? We are seeing some incredible performances night in and night out from teams. Look, right now, I'm going to start with the Western Conference. Look, the top 4 teams right now, we have the Denver Nuggets, Memphis Grizzlies, New Orleans Pelicans, and the Dallas Mavericks. And we have a flurry of MVP candidates against both conferences. But we'll start with the West. What a story the Denver Nuggets have been this year. Right now, they're the number 1 seed. They're only half a game ahead of the Memphis Grizzlies. They're 2 games ahead of the New Orleans Pelicans. But the Denver Nuggets are playing extremely well right now. The Jamal Murray coming back has really helped them. And I thought they were going to struggle more than they did because I thought the last year they were heavily reliant on Jokic really carrying them to wins. And it's great to see that Jokic's play style is still being effective, even with Jamal Murray coming in. Aaron Gordon is having the best season of his career, averaging 17 and 10. Really impressive. Now, likewise, the Memphis Grizzlies. A lot of these teams are really young and up-and-coming teams. Memphis Grizzlies last year, they were the 3 seed last year. The Warriors, no. Sorry, no. That is my apologies. The Memphis Grizzlies were the 2 seed last year. They lost to the Warriors in the second round of the playoffs, and they're looking to be the 2 seed again this year, maybe even the 1 seed. Look, Ja Morant's playing very well right now, 27, 6, and 8 on the season. He's putting the team on his back. Desmond Bane has been out for a large part of it, but they're getting back into it. The New Orleans Pelicans have been somewhat of a surprise to many NBA fanatics out there. Not so much for myself, if I'm being honest. Like I hate to toot my own horn, but this Pelicans team is absolutely loaded, and they gave you a glimpse of what they could do last year without a healthy Zion Williamson. Unfortunately, he is unhealthy again with a hamstring injury that he just recently picked up. But until that point, he was averaging 26, 7, and 5. He was making the Pelicans look like the real deal. They take the 3 seed. Number 4, we have Dallas, who, in my opinion, Doncic is my MVP candidate right now. I originally said that he would have to get the Mavericks into a top 4 seed if he wants to win MVP. I understand while Jokic has led the Denver Nuggets to the 1 seed. When you compare his 25, 11, and 10 to Doncic's 34, 9, and 9, statistically, it is not even a comparison over who's playing better. And while I would like to see Jokic pick up a third straight MVP, being the first person to do that since the one and only Larry legend, Larry Bird himself, I think Doncic, if he keeps the Mavericks into the 4 seed, they're only a game ahead of the Sacramento Kings, 2 games ahead of the Warriors and Clippers. The Clippers, I'm not sure what's happening with them. They might need to address some things before the trade deadline. But the Warriors, I expect to climb up. I also expect them to be a top 4 seed by the end of the year. They especially are getting to the 6 seed now after being the 12 seed 2 weeks ago when Steph Curry got injured. Now they're up to the 6 seed. I personally think the Pelicans, if I had to choose one team, will drop off. I also think the Kings will drop off. I am praying the Kings make the playoffs so they can finally end that drought. The Kings themselves, Sabonis and Fox, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, incredible duo they have been this year. Sabonis averaging 18, 12, and 7, leading the league in rebounds, while De'Aaron Fox averaging 24, 5, and 6, with his buddy Malik Monk coming off the bench. We know what De'Aaron Fox is going to give you. He's a great player. He's just been hiding, lurking in the darkness that Sacramento is. I think they make the playoffs. At the very least, they make the playoff play-in game. I would like to think the Suns, once Devin Booker gets back, are going to find some form, are going to leapfrog the Kings. I also would like to think the Clippers and the Warriors would leapfrog the Kings. I see the Kings ending up as an 8 seed and getting into the playoffs and versing a Denver or a Memphis in the first round. But look, right now, I think Denver is a force to be reckoned with. They manhandled the Clippers the other night on TNT. They essentially manhandled the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. And I think that they are not to be messed with. But there's just something that just tells me in the playoffs, I just don't know if they can get it done. And I think that they got to the conference finals in the bubble for a reason. They played a good brand of basketball, and maybe with additional help from Jamal Murray, they can make a run. But do I see them beating a Warriors team? No, I don't see them beating a healthy Warriors team. We saw last year how they dismantled them. They made Jokic. They let him have his bread, but unfortunately, the others couldn't do enough. And I don't know if Jamal Murray is going to leap them over the top of the Warriors. I see them maybe getting back to the conference finals. I would also like a healthy Clippers team against this Denver Nuggets squad. Look, I know what happened in the bubble. But I think if the Clippers team gets I'm looking at a D'Angelo Russell right now for the Los Angeles Clippers. I think if they can pull off a trade to potentially send Reggie Jackson and maybe a Luke Kennard to the Timberwolves and maybe a first round pick for a D'Angelo Russell, this would be instrumental for the Clippers. They just need a floor general. And honestly, they need a backup center as well. The other thing I need for the Clippers, I need Marcus Morris to stop taking so many shots. I need him to stay in the goddamn corner. Take his threes when he gets them. He likes that mid-range, but he is not the player that was on the New York Knicks before he got traded to the Clippers. He needs to tone it down a bit. Got to tone it down a bit. Look, I think the Nuggets Clippers series would be a 7 game series, but I think the Clippers could redeem themselves probably in Denver. I'd probably see this as a 4-1 matchup is probably how I see this in the second round. Maybe a 5-1 matchup if the Clippers get to the 5 seed. But look, I think for me, heading into the playoffs, I think the Nuggets, the Warriors, and the Clippers, assuming the Clippers can sort stuff out for the trade deadline, those are my 3 teams I like. The Grizzlies got a chance, the Pelicans got a chance, the Mavericks got a chance. I love Doncic, one of my favorite players, but I just don't know if he can get it done. He doesn't have enough help around him. But moving on to the Eastern Conference, ladies and gentlemen, I think a definitely more complex. I think we have a top 5 here. I think we have a solidified top 5, and it's real shame to think that one of the Celtics, Nets, Bucks, Cavs, and 76ers will not make it to the second round. If you had to tell me a team right now that I think would get knocked out, I think it would be the Cavaliers. I think Philadelphia in a 4-5 matchup right now would get them just based off their inexperience. They lost in the play-in tournament, the play-in game last year to the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young had his way. Donovan Mitchell, obviously, amazing acquisition. 71 points the other night. You can't beat that. Incredible. But I think, assuming Embiid is healthy, honestly, I would be tempted to give this to the Cavs in 7 because Embiid simply, God, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be trusted in the playoffs. Look, I don't know. But the Brooklyn Nets are the real deal. Durant, in many people's eyes, is having a down year, and he's still averaging 29, 7, and 6 in a down year. He is playing insane. Jason Tatum and the Celtics are playing great. The Milwaukee Bucks are playing great, despite their absolute battering at the hands of Charlotte the other night. I think they'll all get it together. The second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs is going to be spectacular. I would love nothing better to see a Nets Bucks second round rematch from 2021, and then a Celtics 76ers rematch in the second round, considering how they played each other in the playoffs when Embiid and Simmons were younger. This would be awesome. Look, I see the Knicks at the 6th seed. I see the Pacers at the 7th seed. I see the Bulls at the 8th seed. Sorry, the Heat at the 8th seed. I think Miami. Look, they always make noise in the playoffs, but I don't know. There's just something different about this Miami team this year that just doesn't get me excited. Similar to the Pacers and the Knicks, the Pacers are overachieving right now. For them to make the playoffs would be incredible. The Knicks, look, they're not going to make it past the first round. I'm sorry. I love the Knicks fan base. I was in New York, Madison Square Garden for a Christmas Day game. I think the Knicks fan base is awesome, but I don't see them winning in the first round, especially if they face Milwaukee. Giannis is going to absolutely obliterate them. Look, but right now, the Celtics, Nets, Bucks, and Sixers for me, ooh, it is going to be spicy in the East. But we will get more into the East and West early playoff pictures next week on my Tuesday episode, along with some MVP favorites. We will get into some heavy debates. I'm looking to have 2 guests on the show with me, potentially 3, but I am extremely close to getting 2 guests locked in for a Tuesday episode. It is going to be a blast. Stay tuned. But ladies and gentlemen, viewers, thank you very much for listening to Priceless Takes episode 10. I am Luka Price, your host, and make sure once again to follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, all at Priceless Takes. The link to the account will be posted in the description of this Spotify episode, as well as a thread will be in the outro as soon as we are done. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, Pricey's picks for Week 18. We have $2.89 for your value. The 3 teams above. We have the Steelers, we have the Bengals, and lastly, we have the Green Bay Packers. Take it with you. NBA talk. We'll see how we go. But ladies and gentlemen, love having you with me today. Thank you, and I will see you soon.